What's up, guys? Little update. Nothing super crazy, but sick trade today. Just going to show the system is proven, right? We talked about, the interest of being a buyer into this 506, 501 gap. We obviously, as I stated in the video last night, we saw a slight sweep underneath. We saw this mitigation candle here right at the swing low. How do we know this is the swing low? Very simple, right? We literally go to the weekly all-time high made, push up, push up, push up, high volume rejection bar, it pulls back, we end up catching, and then we go to make a second higher high. It almost confirmed, but a lot of the impulsive move was based off of this pullback here, right? So higher low, or our swing low, is kind of just showing on the weekly there. We essentially got, I would just call it a double bottom, right? It wasn't perfect. It didn't hit the level specifically, but it was very close to that spot. We ended up having a recovery. A lot of people would note this as a bear flag, if you will. As you guys know, I don't trade that way, right? I think that's all, just the Barnes and Noble liquidity traps. I don't really trade that way or believe that. Instead, I just base things off structure, volume, price, and Wyckoff, right? Pretty much all I do. So what we were looking for was a break back above the progression gap at 501 and 506, namely 506, right? We talked about this in the video. There is almost 45 days of daily equal lows that were formulated right here. I always hate how I have to do this. Sorry, guys. Let's make it green, right? So think about how much money in terms of support is built at these equal lows, right? I mean, 45 days, they kept buying off of the same exact spot. That's a lot of money, guys. That's probably buying here and placing their stops ever so slightly below. If they were to go down to the gap here, that's 1%. I assume more people had it a little bit lower. So, just going off of that swing low, that's a 2 to 3% gap fill. I'm sorry, break underneath the gap fill. So, if people are trading options, I wouldn't think that people get stopped out on that via shares, but people that are trading options likely did. All in all, that's a really big spot to sweep liquidity at. Always keep a mindful eye on daily equal lows, weekly equal lows, hourly also, but hourly are not as high on the list as dailies. But that's what we were looking for, right? We were looking for a breach back above 506, a reclaim of those daily equal lows. And sorry for my language, but as you would assume, if people got stopped out and it just reclaims the area that you got stopped out, the natural, notion from a lot of people would be like, oh shit, I'm going to get back in. It just, it got right back above where I got stopped out at. It's now holding. It put in a really, really strong hammer here. I'm going to get back in. And then you get a new influx of buyers. What normally happens, though, is the smart traders already collected those stop losses. So the big guys are already in. And this is usually how lockout rallies kind of form. But that's literally what I did today, right? Progression gap system, as I said, if you open above a spot here, right, you want to see it pull down to the lower extreme at the progression gap. If it doesn't do that, right, you look for the top portion of it, and you can basically buy pullbacks on either or, right? But you always want to try to get the entry off the lower extreme. That's just kind of the better entry. And obviously you can add on the top extreme, right, as a pullback onto that level as well. So as I just drew, right, this is how you could potentially trade this. So this morning, we ended up opening above 506. We opened right here, and I was looking for a pull down into 506 to start the position. But if we jump to like the 15-minute, right, you guys can see it basically just knifed through, right? We had a little bit of a doji candle this morning right here, but that wasn't indicative enough for me to buy this. I would have liked to have seen a hammer or some kind of high volume print. You guys can see volume on this was abysmal. Qs started to sell right off the open. Meta was selling. So Tech saw a pretty instant sell right off of the open. So I just avoided 506, and it was really, really easy to avoid. And then it sold down all the way, as you guys can see, to 501. Now, when it ended up pushing into 501, right, we saw somewhat of a buyer show up here, albeit not super extreme, but higher volume hammer right off of that area. We ended up pulling back underneath 501. We swept a little bit down into like the low 490s. I'm sorry, 499s, and then we recovered 501. If you take a look at the hourly as well, this is what my trade thesis was kind of based off of. I have, if you guys ever look at my charts, if I like live trade, which I haven't done in a while, but I show you guys my screenshots all the time. I trade with 3 panels. So the left portion of my screen is the 15, the middle is the hourly, and then the right is the daily. So I have, time frame continuity, so I can always see, hey, if this is a 15-minute, how is it looking also on the hourly? And then I'm kind of trying to project how the daily will look. So I saw the 15-minute sweep under, and then as it pressed back above, we got the hourly close. I clearly saw, on this higher volume bar here, we had a large lower wick here that closed above. The other candle made a lower low technically, but closed back above. The spread on this candle was a lot smaller than this candle here, so I assumed, right, and I kind of had an edge that, selling was mitigated. We'd likely see a reversal back up to 506. So I did start what were they? The January, and I probably might have underestimated the stock. I probably could have gone with December's, but I wanted to play it safe just to have some ad capability in case QQQ does sell down. Because this is a really tricky spot here, guys, with the unfilled gap below at 610 and then the unfilled gap above at 632. If Q's is planning to sell down into the 610 spot once again, I want to reserve a lot of my capital for those ads on 610. But if Q's is going to sell, Microsoft is likely going to sell, and I just wanted to start light in case Microsoft held nicely, and Q's bottom off 610 and Microsoft maybe just pulled back a little bit to like 506-ish. I wanted to have the capability to be able to add into both. So I went with the January contracts. And yeah, pretty much just a straight rip, right? We ended up kind of going green on the day. I showed you guys the daily, but really kind of talked about this whole thing, right? I mean, watching Microsoft, talked about how we could have a higher low since it's a swing, focusing on the daily bar, and I was also looking at the hourly, as I said. Started it. I didn't really go heavy size. I was pretty clear on that. Just took two, and I had 15 contracts of QQQ that I already had that ended up finishing around 20%. And yeah, I mean, instantly, I shouldn't say instantly, but we saw the trade go instantly green. But as it pressed and pressed, I was up about 40% on the trade. I didn't update it with the screenshots into the close, but yeah, pushed about 40% on those. Really nice trade so far. I'm up about like $600, $700. And you guys can see the daily, right? Went from a really nasty potential looking bear flag that potentially, trapped in bear flag traders, right? That were looking to go short on this. We're trapped into the close. We went red to green on the day with a nice hammer on higher volume here. So this should see continuation. As I said, now that the 501 bottom of the progression gap got tapped, you could potentially see a pullback here into 506 to hold the top of it, get like a daily sequence higher low here, and then start to kind of traject upwards. And yeah, just kind of looking for this to move now into 530. Obviously, there will be a trend that's developed, so it won't be a straight shot like that. I'll just redraw, right? We'll probably get some pullbacks here that just make higher lows along the way. And yeah, just kind of looking for this to push into 530 and 540. But a really nice trade there. Just a quick little recap as to why I took the trade, following up really quickly based off of the scan that I did last night or 2 nights ago, with Microsoft being a focus to be in tandem with Q's. But Q's, like I said, just kind of in the mix, guys. I really don't know what's going to happen with this one. I would prefer, I think the most bullish scenario actually is a sell-off, as counterintuitive as that sounds. I would like to see this sell down. Kind of sweep out everybody that's now playing 617 as support, and then this pull back down here and then start its rally back up into 632. As I said in a previous video, if this is just going to straight up rally into 632, I'm pretty bearish, and I think the distribution's not done, and then this pulls down into 610. Just a really quick layman's term version of what I'm looking at. So that's kind of what I have here. I'm just kind of sitting and waiting. It's been pretty nice. Just going to chill and just wait for Q's to do its thing and kind of ride out Microsoft and see where that ends up putting us if we do sell off. So that's going to be it, guys. Appreciate it.